So this is our first show of the year, and we're super excited to be able to kick things off by introducing not just the content, but also the team behind the scenes that makes the series possible. Wendy, Emily, Mariana, and myself, Margie, your moderator. The show is all about helping you get more out of Teams Phone by talking directly with the people who build it, use it, and support it. So each month, we'll be hosting a podcast-style webinar featuring a new speaker from the Teams Phone product group, diving into real features, real use cases, and real conversations. For our very first episode, and based on popular interest, we're happy to be starting with Q's app. And to help us unpack that, I'm joined by Jessica, the product lead for Teams Q's app. Jessica, thank you so much for being here. I'll let you give a quick intro of yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. I am a PM on the Teams Phone team working in our call queue space, specifically on the Q's app. So I'm really excited to talk to you all about it today, about what it can be used for, and hopefully you learn a little bit.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. I'll be asking Jessica a series of questions across Q's app all up, industry-specific use cases, and a deep dive on features. So to start off, Jessica, if someone asked you what Q's is in one sentence, how would you explain it?
I think I would say that Q's app is really based on call queues, a call queue based app in Teams that's designed for organizations where employees manage customer calls alongside some of their other responsibilities, whether they're leading a call queue or the folks actually taking calls.
That's a great framing, and it naturally leads to how people actually use it day to day. So what would you say are the most valuable scenarios for Q's app?
It really can be useful across a variety of different industries and horizontals. We see a lot of things where it's, people calling into a call queue, whether external or internal users, help desk scenarios, front desk or reception scenarios, customer service hotlines. We really see Q's app being relevant across different industries in a lot of different sectors within the business.
Yeah, so I'd say calling feels straightforward when you're the person dialing in, but there's actually a lot happening behind the scenes for those different workflows. When did you first realize queues was actually a hard problem to get right?
Yeah, it's kind of exactly what you said there, where I think when you're an end user calling in, ideally, like calling feels super simple. You call a number, you get routed to the right person, you talk to somebody, and that's kind of it. But really, when you start digging into it, it is a lot harder than that. You think about like your best experience calling into a business, and to actually make that happen, there's a lot of complexity in making sure the routing's right, you're going to the right person, your information is being passed properly. And so this is really big burden in IT to do all this configuration and gymnastics and do course corrections in real time. And so we really saw an opportunity here to give that power to the people that are actually on the ground in the call queues on a daily basis, so that they can have more control, be more effective, and have more meaningful time with customers.
Yeah, no, I think that really resonates with our customers as well. It's all about creating efficient, effective queues without, heavily having to rely on IT admins for every little change. You're empowering agents with more autonomy so that they can, better serve their customers as well. And I think one thing that comes up, right after that conversation is licensing. And I think a lot of people here can probably agree with me. There's all this new value that, we release as Microsoft, but who needs to be licensed for, and what license do they need to have? It can feel sometimes intimidating as well. So what's the simplest way to think about what licenses are required for different features?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you have a slide here we can pull up, which is great. But it's not as complicated as it seems. Q's app is built on call queues and Teams calling, so you need a way to take calls. So that should be, a Teams phone license through, E5, Teams phone standard. So a way to take calls, you have to have a phone license and a calling plan. And then after you have a phone license and a calling plan, so you're able to use call queues, all you need is access to Teams, so Teams paid subscription, and then a Teams premium license. So those are the main things. So likely if you're already taking calls and using Teams in your organization, the only additional thing that you may want to look into is getting that Teams premium license to unlock Q's app.
That makes perfect sense, and the clarity I feel like really helps, especially when customers are deciding if Q's is the right fit. So I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about what the sweet spot is for queues and when folks should focus on, needing a full contact center versus a queues app.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely one we get a lot. I would say the best way to think about it is that more of a full contact center is really good for like larger scale operations that you need like a lot of special integrations and workflows and like really complex advanced capabilities. Really looking at people who are, that's all they're doing is sitting in call queues every day, doing a lot of workflows within that. Those agents, that is like their entire job, is taking calls. And we have a really great contact center solution at Microsoft. Dynamics 365 is our go-to there. And so really highly recommend they have all those capabilities for some of those advanced needs. Queues app is really meant for more of the simpler workflows for what we call like citizen agents that still need those robust capabilities. So people that they're doing other things day to day, but part of their job is to take calls and manage some calls going through call queues. And so because of that, they need something a little bit better than just what the calls app is today, a little bit more management, a little bit more of that, some of those kind of contact center flavored workflows, but not the complexity or the cost of it. And so that's kind of really where queues app sits, a little bit more lighter weight.
That makes a lot of sense. And once a team decides that the Queues app is the right solution for them, the next question usually becomes who does what inside the app? I know there's a lot of different roles, like, for example, supervisors, authorized users, agents. Can you help us like walk through those the differences between those roles?
Yeah. So when you think about a call queue, you can think about the people managing it and the people actually taking calls. Obviously, those roles can overlap. But the way that we think about it is the people managing that queue is what we call supervisors. And so those people can use the queues app to do things like real-time reporting, see, today, like how is the queue health? What's happening? Do I need to staff more people? Are there a lot of abandoned calls? That sort of thing. They can also opt in and out other agents. So if they do need to manage who's available to take calls, they can actually do that on behalf of the queue. Our supervisor roles are also take the role of authorized users in some cases, which is essentially what we call like these like delegated admins, where you can give them some admin capabilities so that they can actually see and go in and view like historical reporting. They can update and change call queue settings. So if there's, just in time, they need to update something like a routing rule or, or how the greetings are managed, they can do that in the call queue. Whereas our agents, who are the ones that are taking calls, you can also, call them, they're just the people that are answering those calls on a day-to-day basis. They can opt themselves in and out of the queue based on their availability in Queues app. They can see their own real-time metrics, and they can also see who is in the queue, who is a lead, who are other people. So if they need help, they know like which leads are opted in, which of their fellow teammates are opted in that they can reach out to. And we do have another feature coming up, shared call history, which I'll talk about as well. That is more based on them being able to see all the calls that come through and manage callbacks.
That really clarifies who does what inside queues and how workflows really differ based on your role. And I think from there, it makes sense to think about what that means for admins and managers because they're already offloading a lot if you think about it. So from their perspective, what does the Queues app unlock that they didn't have before?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think the hero scenario here is the more agility and the ability to actually update call queue settings like as needed as it's happening. We have a lot of capabilities around being able to manage let's say like the greetings and the routing rules, and so you don't have to actually go through all of IT to get that approved and done. It can happen right away. One example that I can give you is like a scenario if you think of like in a government scenario, local government, citizen services, think about like a call center supervisor could, let's say there's like a crisis or a big power outage, something like that. They could actually, instead of waiting for the IT admin to go and change all these call queues, they could real time update the greeting for that call queue, share that emergency information. They could even redirect overflow calls to different like regional support if they need extra agents. And so it just really helps with some of that additional coverage and being able to make really quick on the ground changes.
Honestly, the crisis example is amazing. I think that really shows how having that flexibility and visibility can really change the game.
Yeah.
Next, I'm curious, is there a moment that you see over and over again where customers suddenly think, oh, this is why we need a more advanced queue?
Yeah, I think from talking to customers, really that kind of like aha moment is when we're seeing people who are they're either using just like our regular calling solutions and it's really just like not doing it for them. They've kind of made it work, but there's a lot of friction that's happening and challenges that are happening. It's taking them a really long time to, figure out who's on schedule to pull those reports and do some of that stuff. And so it's just taking them a long time to do that, or like a lot of like friction filled experience. Or people who are they have a full contact center solution, but they don't use half the features. They're paying too much for it. It's a little too complex. There's too many buttons. They just really needed to take calls. And so it's really having that light bulb moment of like, this is more of the right size solution. If I need something a little more fit for my needs, that's more tailored to that. So it does really kind of depend on how organizations have set up their whole call queue workflows and what they need day to day. But that's usually when we kind of see them land in that middle ground space of QZAP.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes sense because QZAP, based on everything you've said so far, really shows up differently depending on the use cases in the industry. And I think that's a great segue into the next topic that I wanted to go into, which is more industry specific. So we know QZApp can be used across a wide range of industries, but it really shines when it's tailored. So can you share a few examples about how different sectors use queues today?
Yeah, I have tons of examples I can use. We see people using it in all sorts of ways. It's really cool to see as someone who's working on the product. I can hit on a few. So I feel like healthcare is a big one where we see you can imagine like patient appointment lines, you're routing calls for scheduling, for follow-ups. Also looking at some scenarios like insurance verification or other kind of like more admin style things for healthcare, which can be both internal and external, and managing calls related to things like coverage and billing. In things like financial services, we see something similar where looking at those external clients like customer banking hotlines, loan application hotlines. So everything from something more generic to the business to something that's like a little bit more specified, where they want a loan officer is working on some of those loans day to day, but then taking in some of the calls of people that have questions. And then we even see scenarios through like government and even education where you're looking at, reaching out to citizens or to students, or you're even helping people, internally doing things like HR support, tech support, and that sort of thing. So lots of different use cases for it.
Those examples are great. And I love, real customer stories because that helps me bring it to life. So can you share a success story from a customer using the queues in a specialized context, maybe like healthcare or even retail, for example?
Yeah, definitely. I think healthcare is probably one that pops up the most that I can think of, which is we fairly recently released a new feature, which is shifts integration, where you can actually manage the opt-in and opt-out availability of who's taking calls based on a shift that you create in Teams. So rather than having to, remember who is on, who's at one location or who's available for one queue, you can actually put that all into shifts, and then it'll automatically make someone available or unavailable to take those calls, which can be really great. And so a scenario where we saw this really light up is in healthcare when you have multiple locations. So we actually saw one of our customers that uses, they have multiple clinics in different locations, and each clinic has its own schedule. So there's people on staff that work, there are nurses that are on the floor that some of their schedule is to take some of those calls from the call queue. But there are some people that float to different clinics on different days of the week, or maybe, certain times of the week, they just go to the clinic that needs their help the most. And so that shift is actually being scheduled that week prior. And so then rather than having them remember which call queue they're supposed to sign into when, or having someone else manage that since they have a lot on their plate, they actually implemented shifts where now where that person goes to, the first clinic, clinic A, they're automatically opted into that queue the time they're supposed to be there. And then, the rest of the week when they're in clinic B, they're automatically opted out of the first queue and opted into that one. And so we saw them really using that as someone who's floating across different locations and helping automate that coverage, which was really cool to see.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that example. It's really interesting to see how it can be used differently across different industries. One of my favorite things about talking to customers is also seeing how creatively they use the product. So what kind of Teams Phone customers surprise you with how they use queues? Like anything that's unique, or how creative do they get?
I think it's really more like how they adapt it to their use cases. There's if you're familiar with call queues at all, there's a ton of different settings that are available with like routing, coverage, managing callbacks, and there's like the opting in and out. And so there's a lot of ways that there's this kind of core experience, but we see a lot of customers really leverage it to that core experience and build it up to really meet their scenarios and their workflows. And so we've seen a lot of people kind of adapt it in those really interesting ways. One of the ways that stands out is, we developed reporting capabilities. And so really just so people can have like a pulse on, on what's happening in the queue, and then, update and change their queue and how they manage it accordingly. And we actually saw someone who was using Queues app in their call queues for an HR like employee hotline, and they were actually able to see some of their abandon rate and resolution rates and how they were trending a bit lower than usual. And because of that, they were able to go into Queues app, see those trends, and then analyze, go back and kind of analyze how they had set that up and what the call flows were looking like. And they were actually able to see, talk to the agents and understand like what kind of calls were taking longer. And so then they were able to then, proactively get additional training for the team and have their agents more set up for success to improve some of those resolution rates, and which made callback or call waiting times a lot less, reduce the abandon rate. And so it's cool to see how they're using that data to then make changes within the call queue based on how their call queues work.
Thanks, Jessica. That just shows that Queues app enables a lot of these features that really, helps our customers a lot with a lot of the problems that they might be facing already. That being said, I think it might be nice to hear from you more about features and different use cases and how it unlocks different aspects of the Queues app. So can you share more about features? How do features like analytics and delegated admin settings help teams stay on top of their workload?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we see a lot of people using some of these delegated admin settings, as I had mentioned, as kind of the people who are like on the ground and able to see how different things are changing within the call queue itself. So we've seen some people use, looking at there's like, let's say they have a holiday coming up and they need, they have to be flexible in terms of like who should be managing the call queue at that time or how they manage routing. And so we'll see people actually go in and be able to update some of those settings real time and, and close the business hours for holiday routing, change the greetings and the overflow messages based on what they know people are calling in about. We've also seen some people know which agents are available and which ones aren't. And so if someone is out sick, for instance, instead of having to, scramble and change any of the routing and, go to IT, try to change the routing rules or manage all of these calls that are being overflowed, the supervisor or lead can actually go in and opt in other agents and opt out unavailable agents. So if they're seeing, real-time metrics saying like all of a sudden we have a lot of calls that are happening, the wait time is really high, we have a lot of calls waiting, that lead can actually go in and proactively opt in other agents in that queue. And those agents then automatically will start getting calls coming to them in teams. And so they can just, send out a blast, say like, hey, we need you to, be all hands on deck right now. And then that agent doesn't have to do anything but answer the call. And that supervisor actually has the ability to, with the delegated admin settings, go and make those changes to, stay on top of things, help with resolution, and make changes as needed.
That's awesome. I would say another area that we hear a lot about is reporting. So what reporting does Q's nail today, and where do you still lean on Power BI?
Yeah, it's a really good question because we actually see people using both things. So, and for folks that are unfamiliar, in Q's app today, we have reporting capabilities. So you can see all of, we have a variety of rich metrics and graphs and reports that you can see both real-time stats and historical stats across call queues, auto attendance, and agents. You can see an aggregated view of your call queues, aggregated view of agents, or dive deep into them. You can export those reports to Excel to do, more detailed revisions and, tracking of trends and whatnot. But you can also use set up Power BI and set up Power BI to grab additional data and make some of those reports kind of outside of the Q's app world, just for like call queues and auto attendance in general. And so really what we see is people who Power BI is really great for some of those more advanced and like customizations. If you're trying to do deep dive analysis of what's happening, or you have really specialized, like regular custom like reports that you want to have refreshed, we see a lot of people choosing and opting for Power BI. They're likely people who are already familiar with Power BI and doing some of those analytics. And so for them, the kind of data that they need is they want to pull it into those reports that they're familiar with, how they can use the data and create those trends and extrapolate it. Where using Q's app itself today is really where we look at people that, you don't really want to upskill them to use Power BI. They just need to see key metrics directly in the app. They want something, some lightweight analysis. They can export that to Excel and see. They can see those trend lines. They can make some of those decisions based on it. But it's really people who, they're doing other things day to day. They just need to check on the Q health. They're not, a data scientist. And so they can go to Q's and still see a lot of valuable metrics there.
I mean, I love that. So for people who maybe aren't as savvy, they already have QSAP reporting, and that's perfect for them. But then for Power BI, if you want to do a deeper analysis, you always have that option as well. So now looking ahead a bit, because I know everyone is super excited. I mean, I myself am super excited to hear as well. What's on the roadmap for the QSAP that customers are anticipating?
So we have a lot of things we're really excited about. A few things that I'll touch on is based on reporting, like we just talked about. We just recently increased the reporting window, or we are increasing it to a 45-day window in historical reporting. So that way you can see a lot more data at once in those trend lines for like over, a month of time range. We are also rolling out automatic recording for call queues. So you will actually have the ability to, similar to meetings, turn on the option to automatically record all calls coming into a call queue, which makes it really helpful for, for anything that where you want that like kind of training, transcription, being able to refer back to calls. And that will also be really essential for us for a feature we have coming up, shared call history. I know that people have already there. I see some chatter in chat about that feature, and that's one we're really, really excited about. It shared call history is the ability to see all calls that have come through the call queue in Q's app. So you can see if both of us are agents in a call queue and you receive a call, I can actually see the history of that in our shared call history in Q's app. I can see the recording if recording's been turned on and easily refer to it. It also has solved for missed calls. So if agents are unavailable or it's after hours and you can see calls that have come in that have been missed calls to the queue or people have left a voicemail, which makes it a lot easier to be able to manage callbacks effectively and efficiently and make sure, you're covering all your clients' needs.
I think you said a lot of buzzwords that people have been waiting for. And I don't think you can share any timelines, or do you have any timelines that you are able to share for any of these for those people here that, might be anticipating this coming soon?
Yeah, all of those that I mentioned are on the public roadmap. So we are looking at
Awesome.
shipping all of those very soon. So, within the next month or a few months. And we keep the public roadmap up to date. So you can always refer to that and see, what we have latest and greatest with queues and know when it'll hit your tenant.
Amazing. So it's coming very, very soon. Um, Now, can you give us a peek behind the curtain? Maybe walk us through a day where, shared call history actually saves the day or prevents a mix-up or made a customer's experience feel seamless, even during preview, because I know you mentioned that shared call history is still rolling
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was gonna bring up is that we have had a variety of people that have already tried this out in some of our private preview, which I recommend if you're interested in getting this stuff early on for Q's app. One of the scenarios we've seen really light up is in healthcare and specifically with shared call history having like a patient helpline. So if we see like a patient call in to, more of like a generic helpline to schedule an appointment, for instance, if let's say all of the nurses in the queue are busy and and that goes to voicemail, then the patient is able to leave a voicemail on what they called about, and then that voicemail is actually directly seen within shared call history. So let's say that like a nurse had to step away because there was some emergency on the floor, and so they weren't able to be by the phone. Very real scenario. They're doing other things than just sitting around managing a call queue, and so they can easily come back, check Q's app, sit down at their desk and see like, oh, did I miss any calls while I was away? And they can see that, a patient called in, they can see that voicemail transcript, and they know what they're calling about. And so, let's say that someone called in that was had a question about, their specific medication. They can actually see what that's about, and then they can decide, if they're the best person to follow up with them or not. If let's say they know that another nurse has more of a specialty in that case, they can actually leave that for the other nurse. Or if they're someone who wants to call back the patient, they can actually initiate that callback directly from the Q's app itself, and then they can mark that entry as resolved. So that way, if another nurse logs on, they can see that's been resolved, and they don't have to call the patient back. Or they can see it's unresolved, if it's something that's more their expertise, and then initiate the callback then. So really just empowering them to feel like they can handle all of their tasks in once, and they're not going to miss something by stepping away, and they can have the best person manage the caller's needs.
Yeah, that really sounds like a game-changing feature. So it makes sense why there's so many people that are so excited about it. All right, so now AI is obviously top of mind for everyone right now. Where do you see AI fitting into queues without making it overwhelming?
Yeah, that's a good question. Everybody, that's definitely top of mind and what we hear a lot of people asking about right now. When we think about intelligence, it's definitely something that we're focused on and looking at ways that it can, light up different scenarios across calling in general, and especially in Q's app. We really see an opportunity here of like taking out the manual work of tracking call outcomes. So we see a lot happening in with intelligence and different workflows. So agents and supervisors are spending like a lot of time in their workflows, like summarizing calls when they're like transferring them, looking up when they last talked to a customer, during a call, what did I talk to them about? What do I have to follow up with them for? Or looking at queue health and trying to see, okay, here's a lot of data that's happening. Which numbers should I pay attention to right now? And what should I do with that data? And I think we really see an opportunity here to optimize that and bring in intelligence. We are focused on finding ways that intelligence can empower our users to make smarter decisions with, how they manage customers' calls, callbacks, how they manage call queues and queue health. And also really finding ways to free up their time on things that are, they're spending a lot of time, a lot of friction, really arduous processes. How can we use intelligence there to, have give them more time back to spend on customers. So there's a lot in the pipeline there, but you can see we're kind of looking at ways across the workflow to make smarter decisions and free up time.
Makes total sense. I'm super excited to know what's in the pipeline. And of course, we'll have to wait a little bit patiently, but when the time is here, we'll hear more about it, and I can't wait for that. So for someone listening who's maybe brand new or maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all of the information we just shared, what would you tell them to focus on first?
I think first things first is make sure the call queue is set up properly. That's definitely going to be kind of the biggest lift. But all of CueSapp is built on, our core Teams calling and call queue experiences. The underlying routing and config rules, like all of that really just helps things run smoothly. So there's a lot of settings in there and, it can take some time, but that really you want to set up a good foundation for making sure like what's going to happen if no agent is available, or, are we going to allow callbacks or not? Are we going to, are there any thresholds that we want to meet where we want to route people, to voicemail or to this other queue? And so just setting that up is a good foundation. And then that's, I feel like, the best place to get started, making sure that you know how those rules are set for your call queue. And then you can just start taking calls and see how they appear in the app. You'll just look at CueSapp. You'll start seeing patterns of, how people are opting in and opting out. And then that really just kind of makes it a little bit easier to see, get the flow of how does your organization operate, and how can you make that CueSapp your landing place. You'll see it kind of naturally becomes the place you'll want to go to see what all those calls are, see what your opt-in status is across different queues, and see some of those metrics. So if you just keep kind of seeing how calls flow in, it'll just start, naturally kind of making sense from there.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think the setup could either make or break your experience.
Yeah.
So before we open up the floor to all of the attendees so that they can also ask questions, what would you like to leave listeners with today?
I think that the last thing I'll just say I want to emphasize is that we're really investing in this space and really committed to bringing a lot of new features and workflows to calling and call queues. We've made a lot of investments to calling across the board, and all of those things flow into CueSapp itself. And CueSapp is really something we see as like a hero scenario where you can light up those call queues and do more advanced workflows with them, make that calling just all the more effective and seamless. And so I just wanted to give some confidence that like we're continuing. We have a lot of ideas here. We have a lot of things that we're rolling out, and we hope you are really excited about some of these features that will be launched very soon. And we have a lot more down the pipeline, and we really love all of your feedback all along the way. It's, we're building it for all of our customers, and so we love to hear what they have to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. So I think we can now open up the floor to questions. And so if you have any questions, please raise your hand, and then we can actually we can allow you to unmute yourself so that you can ask that question. Or we can monitor the chat as well and answer the questions from there.
Yeah, I'm just catching up on some of the questions in
Okay,
chat.
so Kent has his hand raised, so maybe we can allow them to speak.
Yeah, hi. I also just put my question in the chat. Is there any, you mentioned callback. Is there any plans to improve that so you can configure the timeout and the message that are played to the customer after you select the timeout, and perhaps also an option if the customer wants to put in their own number instead of whatever number they are showing from their main line?
I see. Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now for callback experiences, we've just launched the kind of standard callback experience that you see today, where when a certain threshold is met, then you can, allow the caller to opt in to receive a callback. This
Exactly.
is good feedback on some of the additional functionality here. We're definitely always looking at improving some of those additional like kind of second level settings of, after like if they've asked for a callback and then there's like, some additional timeout or message changes. So that's definitely something that we can kind of consider for the future. Right now, what you see today is what we have for callback experiences, but we're always looking at ways we can make our customer experience better. So I'll definitely take this feedback and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a question from Jill.
Will there be a change that supports if an agent goes ring no answer, meaning they were offered a call, but they didn't accept it, that they would then get marked unavailable in the queue so that calls do not continue to be delivered to them?
I
Be
see.
like a Rona offering?
What we offer there is our solution for that is really more presence-based routing is likely what I'd recommend there, which is if an agent is based on their their presence status. So if they are not showing as available, then a call is not routed to them. And so that's usually what the most like standard approach, because we see a lot of scenarios where someone may, step away or, and then come back to their desk. And so they need to there is a desire to have them continue to be opted in, and there are overflow rules or no agent rules that you could implement if someone calls and no agent picks up. But in that scenario, presence-based routing is likely the best answer for that, to not route any calls anymore to someone that is not seen as available.
So the agent will continue to need to ensure they track their status correctly. There won't be a Rona option, is what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah, and they can also, if you allow agents to opt themselves in or out of the queue, then they can actually control whether or not they are receiving calls. So if an agent knows that they will be, their status may be available on Teams, but they do not want to be taking calls from the call queue, if you trust them to opt themselves in and out, they could actually opt out of the queue, and then they will not receive any calls. So that's another option too, that you can empower your agents to make that, to kind of track what their availability is there.
Awesome. So there's also, okay, never mind. We have another raised hand, so Ken, feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, sorry. How about a real-time display for call queues? I know there's a lot of third-party solutions out there, but it would be nice to have it some kind of built-in. I don't think the queues app as such is good for real-time, as it requires you to be logged in with some kind of web display or something. Is that on the pipeline?
Can you clarify? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. It's about real time.
Yeah, in the queues app, you can see how many calls are waiting in queue, all that kind of stuff that you also have in a real-time display where you can monitor how many calls are waiting. But we have customers who would like to have that on a wallboard, so they can monitor in their environment how many calls are waiting on for someone to pick up. And that shouldn't be on the supervisor's PC. It should be on a big screen TV on the end of the office.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And so you can my recommendation there would just be to have, to have the supervisor be the one to, potentially like cast that to a larger TV. We want to, or you can also, and you can control who can see those stats. And so we allow up to 15 authorized users to see within the call queue. And so you could have some people who are, the traditional supervisor role, but you could also have some supervisors where if you wanted to, you could apply an additional voice apps policy, a voice applications policy, to turn off all of their controls to call queue settings and only allow them to see some of that reporting and just give them reporting capabilities. And so that way, if you need more people than just your kind of traditional supervisor delegated admin to see those reports, you could actually add more supervisors with more restrictive policies that would allow them to only see the reports. And then that could help allow them to control who's seeing the real-time stats, and then better be able to manage it on like a larger screen or device that everyone can see.
Yeah, that's kind of what the customer is doing today. They have put the premium license on all their call queue users, and they can see it on their own PC. But of course, when they're working, it gets hidden behind some other app or some other web page or something. So yeah.
I see. Yes. Yeah. And that's that's some feedback that we've gotten as well, is like is the ability to pop out the Queues app and kind of use it as like a separate tab. So we are also have been looking into that as well, which would then allow you to see what's happening in that kind of dashboard of the Queues app while you're doing other things in Teams. Okay. So it's something that we're looking into. It's great to hear the feedback on.
Okay, great.
All right, let's see if there's any other questions that have been unanswered in the chat.
I see a question from Andreas about the tracking shared voicemail and like red status, and that essentially there's being a problem about multiple agents responding to the same voicemail. And so I can speak to that one. The shared call history feature that we are rolling out should help address that. So as I kind of mentioned when I was speaking through the workflows for that feature, is that we will have a resolution status associated with that entry. So if there is when someone leaves a voicemail in shared call history, you go into the Queues app, you go into your call queue, you can see all of the calls that have happened from that call queue, including voicemails. And so you can see the voicemail, and then you can see if it is currently not resolved or resolved. And that way, if an agent has followed up on it and has taken action, they can mark that as resolved. And then they know, all the other agents know that they don't have to look at that voicemail anymore. Or they can see which ones are currently open items. So that should help resolve some of that issues of not being sure from traditional shared voicemail who has done what yet. Great. Yeah, and I see some good feedback in chat too, so I appreciate that. We always love everyone's thoughts on how they're using queues and how to make it better. So thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
That's about it. Thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully the session was helpful. We'll also send out a survey to get some feedback.
Thanks everyone.